समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
The most cruel threat in the life of a commentator like me is that all of one's writing is available for scrutiny and fact checks in eternity, forever. You may get away with an error of fact, interpretation, and, God forbid, a prediction. For today, you may get away with it, but it comes back to haunt you at some point. The arrival of Google has made it much, much worse. So, Shekhar Gupta, in your 1983 India Today cover story on Sunil Gavaskar, you said his son Rohan was named after West Indian idol Rohan Kanhai and bats left-handed like him. Hello? Of course, guilty as charged for the crime of not remembering that Rohan Kanhai was right-handed. That's why when you think you've been proven right, you should claim vindication. Not always or even often, but when it's something counterintuitive, it's something significant, counterintuitive, that drew widespread criticism and skepticism, even ridicule when you first wrote it. As I did with this national interest, please see on your screen, I will share a link with you. Remember post 9/11, the expression Af-Pak emerged, referring to that region between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So this national interest, published on 21st November 2011, was headlined, Leave Af to Pak. As a semi-war breaks out now on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border involving jets, drones and artillery, it's my time to say, I told you so 15 years ago. Leave Af to Pak. Pak will get themselves into trouble. They will dig a hole for themselves there. Don't interfere. In any case, remember Napoleon, never interfere with an adversary when he's making a mistake. How can you leave Afghanistan to Pakistan? We should be there in strength, we as in India, even by way of an arrangement with the Americans or the regime they leave behind as a sizable threat to Pakistan's rear. India has to be there. That was the argument. Of course, it's India's opportunity. And you are saying, leave Af to Pak? Are you nuts? The angriest criticism, as you would expect, came from the MEA and military veterans who want to be fighting the Pakistanis 24/7 by 365 by eternity. And never mind the geography. I will summarize the criticism as follows. Point number one, when the Americans leave, Pakistan will turn Afghanistan into its vassal state. Number two, even if they don't colonize Afghanistan, they will have a puppet government fulfilling their fantasy of strategic depth. Pakistan's narrow geography and lack of depth, as exposed again during Op Sindoor, has been a chronic bugbear with the Pakistani strategists and the military establishment. Number three, Pakistan will draw trained and battle-hardened Taliban and Mujahideen groups into its Lashkars and unleash them in an even bigger way on India. The answer to all of these 15 years ago was simple. One, that three of the great powers tried subduing Afghanistan at the peak of their respective power and were defeated. Britain in the mid-19th century, Soviet Union 1977 onwards with the invasion, the US post 9/11 in 2001. If the Pakistanis really think they are hotter than all of them, we should say go ahead and order popcorn. Second, that simple geography, the Hindu Kush and the great cold emptiness across it makes strategic depth the fantasy of an idiot. And I'm being kind with that description. I could use something tougher or something more rude, but this is a family publication, so won't be publishable by our standards. And third, that nearly 25 years of insurgency in Kashmir and also Punjab then, and now with a record of 40 years, we know that Afghans have never joined the Pakistani Lashkars in Kashmir. There might be some odd ones somewhere, but mostly people who might be going by the name Afghan or Afghani are people who may have participated in the Afghan jihad alongside the Mujahideen. They are not Afghans. So once again, the Afghans have never, at least not in any significant numbers, joined the Pakistani Lashkars in Kashmir because Afghans have their own nationalism as well. Almost all foreign terrorists in Kashmir are exactly the same ethnic stock as the Pakistani army, which means Punjabi Muslims. Now see where we stand. The Pakistanis are carrying out deep bombing raids inside Afghanistan and mostly killing civilians. If they claim they're carrying out surgical raids, targeted raids, only people they are targeting are getting killed, that cannot be correct, and I will soon explain why. In one of the raids, they killed 18 members of one family. I just told you it's impossible to carry out a really precise raid there. This terrain and demography in Afghanistan makes precision bombing fanciful and risk prone even for the greatest military power human history has seen. America, since the beginning of this millennium, that is when the Cold War ended, that's why I said the, the greatest military power the world has ever seen. With all their satellites, human and signal intelligence, drones, and precision weapons, they often killed civilians in mosques, large clan compounds, or simply kept gutting empty caves. Why did I use the word demography here? Why did I say democracy is a constraint? That's because in Afghanistan, it is normal practice for clans or large families or multiple families of one clan to live together. And more often than not, the compound you hit or the residential location you hit will be housing not just your target but a much larger family, lots of family members, members of extended family, and the clan. American raids did often kill a commander or two, but there was always much collateral damage. Each such attack only swelled the ranks of the Taliban as men of the affected families and clans swore revenge. If Pakistanis think they can do better than the Americans, then an Indian partisan can say, go ahead, make my day. Nobody wants to rejoice over any human misery, particularly when the Afghans, irrespective of the regime in power, have always had affection for India and Indians. The last thing we want to see, or India wants to see, is any Afghans, especially civilians, getting hurt. But the fact is that with their arrogance and short-sightedness, Pakistan has opened up a second front for themselves. India, therefore, isn't the only country in the subcontinent that has to worry about a two-front threat. Of course, there are differences. Afghanistan can't be to Pakistan what China is to India despite territorial disputes between them. Between them means Pakistan and Afghanistan. There is no Taliban-India alliance unlike China-Pakistan one. And finally, India and Afghanistan, at least in the existing territorial reality, as different from the cartographic fact, are far apart with wide Pakistani or Pakistani-controlled territory between us. If at all, India can be accused of launching proxy war on Pakistan, it might be the patronage to the brilliant Afghan cricket team, which treats Pakistan as their favorite rival. The Pakistani strategic posture and military planning, however, was never designed for a two-front situation, least of all for the mess in which they've landed themselves now. They are at war with a nation which is, if anything, even more Islamic and Puritan Sunni than them, killing and getting killed during the holy month of Ramzan. The Pakistani political leadership is weak, devoid of any intellect and any moral authority. Its diplomacy, that is professional diplomacy, is entirely India, China, US focused and suffers from a presumptive view of Afghan as a subordinate or vassal state. The military is short of ideas. If all is a bloody mess on the Western Front, they blame it on the Eastern neighbors, India. Their own militant groups they've named in religious epithets. Let's explore this a little bit. For Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan (TTP), Pakistan's official propaganda name now is Fitna al-Khawarij. Fitna means discord, revolt, civil war. This comes from Islamic history where the first fitna was fought between 656 AD and 661 AD for 5 years, resulting in the replacement of the Rashidun Caliphate by the Umayyad Caliphate. There was, however, a third group in that war. That was a group of Islamic extremists or a kind of religious renegades who would submit to no prophet, but God directly. They were described as Khawarij. That religious imagery is invoked by the Pakistani Army ISI now for TTP, Fitna al-Khawarij. Otherwise, how do you rouse your own Islamic army to fight a group whose main demand is imposition of Sharia rule in all of Pakistan? From the same history, they draw their propaganda name for the Baluch insurgents, Fitna al-Hind, which means mischief or subversion from India, insinuating that it's entirely an Indian-run operation or an Indian-run subversion or an Indian-run civil war. This again fails the test of geography and demography. The Baloch are native not just of Balochistan but also adjoining vastly empty zones of Iran and Afghanistan. India cannot have any access there at scale. Maybe one odd guy here and there, maybe some money here and there, but India cannot have any presence there at scale. Of course, some in Indian agencies may see these Pakistanis' allegations as a good compliment. But Pakistanis know their 3,549 kilometer western borders with Afghanistan and Iran are now a live challenge. And then, what if Donald Trump decides to strike Iran? For decades, the Pakistani establishment has nursed multiple fantasies looking west. One, strategic depth in Afghanistan. Second, an unshakable Islamic ally in Iran. And then, the touching notion that they belong culturally and religiously in West Asia, more specifically the Arab Middle East. This was their escape from their subcontinental identity. Mostly because India is so dominant that cultural, linguistic, and family linkages make the subcontinental identity a synonym for being Indian. So Pakistanis have been trying to go as far away from it as possible. And before I let you go, there is also a postscript or a PS with this column. Since I started this talking about the perils of a commentator's life, I also want to underline the fact that making geopolitical calls is riskier than domestic politics. Domestic politics, very often you don't get caught out on a specific fact unless you call an election wrong, which I would never do. As in, I would never call an election. It's too much of a risk. In geopolitics, things are trickier because real facts can come back and hit you in the face. The 4th anniversary this week of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a good time to own up to one such error that I made. The National Interest published on Saturday, 26 February 2022 had said rather too sweepingly that by the time you read this column on 26 February, the Russians would already be in Kiev or they'll be there maybe in a couple more days. Not only were they pushed back rudely from there at great losses, they've been fighting a grinding war of attrition, grinding and mostly stationary war of attrition for 4 years hence. So once again, guilty as charged.